Okay, we're back talking about sociology, and today we are going to be talking about culture. Just a reminder that for each of these videos that you watch, whether it's a lecture, whether it's something that doesn't feature me, regardless, make sure you have your textbook out and open with you as you're watching these videos. There will be questions in most of these videos that you'll be required to answer and submit as a grade. And it would just be helpful if you have your textbook near you as we're going through this video. So as I mentioned today, we are going to talk about culture. And let me grab a pen. And sorry if you hear some background noise. The laundry's running right now. So we're going to talk about culture. And again, make sure you're looking at this in your textbook. And there's three pieces to culture that I want us to think about in Introduction to Sociology. And I'm going to start out at the micro level, talking briefly about attitudes, values, and beliefs. This is going to be an overview about culture, okay? Making sure you can see me well enough. Might have to alternate sides here. So attitudes, values, and beliefs. So when we think about this on a micro or an individual level, we all understand that we have our own values, attitudes, and beliefs, okay? Whether they are beliefs about religion or what the best method is to care for someone, any number of things, right? So that's probably easy for each of us to think about. What are my values? Sometimes that causes some introspection, thinking about yourself, right? What do I value? What do I believe in? What kind of attitudes do I have on various topics, okay? So that's very much at the micro level. Now, we're interested in that, certainly in sociology, about what individuals think, what they value, what their attitudes are. But we're also interested, probably more so, in how there are common sets of values and common sets of attitudes and common beliefs. And, if we were to have a discussion about this, we could ask one another, some basic values, attitudes, and beliefs. And probably what you're going to find, you will find this, is that from person to person that you talk to, there's probably some similar attitudes and similar values. Well, how is that possible? How is it possible for us to have something in common with other people? We like to think as individuals that we are self-thinkers, that we're individuals, and that we have our own ideas about things. But really, once we start comparing person to person to person to person, there's a lot of commonality there. And the reason why there's commonality is that we all live in communities. We all live in societies. One thing you're going to find in the next video that we watch is we've been living in communities and in small groups and societies as well, not terribly long in terms of human history. But because we live in groups with other people, we're exposed to very similar circumstances, similar events, similar people. And so as a result, who we are as individuals is in many ways quite predictable from person to person because of those common experiences. Now that is generally what sets sociology apart from psychology. Psychology is the study exclusively, generally, of the individual, sometimes of the brain. In sociology, you have to study individuals because we're studying society, and individuals make up society. But sociology looks beyond the individual in terms of groups, in terms of society at large. So that's going to bring us to the consideration of the next topic about culture that we want to talk about here, and that's norms. Okay. So I'm going to write norms over here, and the definition of norms is in your textbook, but I would like for you to think about norms as guidelines and expectations for behavior. Okay? Now, you don't necessarily have to abide by the norm, but what are the consequences if you don't? Okay? Now, norms are different than law, and we're going to call that formal policy and law. Now, formal policy and law are requirements, they're regulations, they're policies. So we're going to call these formal, hopefully you can see that my pen's running out, but formal guidelines, and then I'm going to put regulations. And you know, these are fundamentally different from one another, formal policy, law, and norms. Norms, it's a good idea for you to abide by the norm. Now, sometimes norms could be bad. You know, I've done some work in public health, and locally I've done some work in smoke-free policies, smoking cigarettes. And it used to be the norm for people to smoke cigarettes. Well, we all know, whether you smoke or not, that smoking is a bad behavior. It's very bad for your health. But if everybody is doing it, then maybe it's not so bad. That's where norms can be sometimes detrimental to individuals. Okay? Now, if you smoke and if you're of age, you know, you're not going to go to jail. I mean, it may be frowned upon depending on the people you associate with. Okay? You know, we're going to talk about the implications of the kind of groups that we find ourselves in a little bit later in the semester. But you're not going to go to jail for smoking a cigarette as long as you are according to the regulations. And in the state of Kentucky, we know that 25-year-olds, for example, are legal to smoke. But if you're 8 years old and you're smoking, the school finds out about that, the parents may be seen by social workers, right? Because they are violating the rules about child welfare, okay? So society says that there are some behaviors that everybody's expected to do, right? And if you don't abide by the behavior, society reserves the right to punish you. So if I drive 150 miles an hour on the bypass, sure, I've got the freedom to do that if I've got a car that's good enough to do that. But just because we have freedoms, it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. As a matter of fact, freedom is a construct. We only have freedoms as it relates to what the law allows us to do. We can't do whatever we want to do. If you live in a society, if you function in a society, you have to agree to go by the rules, the regulations of the society. I can't drive as fast as I want on Frederica Street. Part of the condition about me driving on Frederica Street is that I agree to the laws. I have to know what they are. And to be honest, I don't know all of the laws. That's why sometimes people will make honest mistakes, but it could result in a ticket, a speeding ticket, or other form of punishment. Okay? In order for you to participate in society, you have to agree to the regulations. And if you don't, society reserves the right to punish you. Now, norms aren't that way, right? But let's say that I am with a group of friends, and let's say that we decide that we're going to go bowling together, and I show up wearing a tuxedo. Well, my friends probably can look past that. But when they probably know that I'm crazy and I'm just dressing to kind of get a reaction from them and that sort of thing. But once I go out on the bowling lane and I start bowling in a tuxedo, other people that are there that are not my friends might look at me as though I'm strange because I'm going against the norm about what you're supposed to wear when you bowl. But I'm not going to jail for it. But people might look at me as I'm kind of crazy. We underestimate the power of norms in daily life. Okay? Norms guide our behavior everywhere we go. What should I be doing as a teacher when I'm here on the video? What should you wear when you go to the classroom? Are you allowed to talk? Are you not allowed to talk? There's some formal policies about that, but a lot of that is based on norms. What is acceptable social behavior? Okay? So we're going to elaborate on this a little bit more in the next lecture, but for now, just an introduction to attitudes, values, beliefs, norms, and formal policy and law. Before I leave, I want to show you one more thing, and I've kind of alluded to this. Individual attitudes, values, and beliefs, when these come together, right, those become social norms. So when individuals have similar values, similar attitudes, similar beliefs, those become norms. And society, again, may take those norms, the ones that are the most important for functioning in society, and adopt that into formal policy and law. Now, on the other hand, how do laws and formal policy affect guidelines and expectations? Okay? So if the law is I can only drive a certain speed limit on a road, then how does that affect how, the basic guidelines about driving a vehicle in a community? Okay? As an example. And then in turn, how do norms affect attitudes, values, and beliefs? Culture is a social construct. So just as we said in symbolic interactionism, where it sees society as the product of the everyday interaction of individuals, okay? What we do every day, over time, becomes the culture. Now, culture doesn't change very much moment to moment, but sometimes there are major events that cause things to change. Certainly, the pandemic is an example of this. How does it change the expectations? Are you supposed to wear a mask? Are you not supposed to wear a mask? Is it the law that you wear a mask, or a guideline, or what's going on here? And that can sometimes lead to confusion in a population. It can lead to frustration. It can lead to sadness and depression. We are creatures of habit. And certainly in the United States, we kind of take that for granted. Society is quite predictable, and that makes it comfortable for people to live because they know what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do. But when culture is sort of disrupted, then that can make it a challenge for people that live in that culture. Okay? All right. Thanks for your attention, and see you next time.